Yeah, okay. So let me explain what the thumbnail really means before everybody here gets upset at me, right? Oh, hold on one second. Let me. Man, this chair. Okay. I mean, I do film in the garage, right? Until things get better. But okay. Listen, don't get mad at me right away. Now, this is probably going to make sense to some of you. Probably won't to some of you, But bear with me. I'm going to play something for you that Eddie Hearn said that some YouTubers are saying that he shouldn't have or wasn't supposed to be released. It's something crazy. Of course it's supposed to be released, right? He's talking to a camera. He knows what he's doing. So basically what he says to me makes a whole lot of sense, and it's what I've been saying, but on a grander scale, right? He's saying what I've been saying about Bud, but on a grander scale. Now I'm going to play that for you now. Then we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to have our own conclusions, right? Here it is.
But you were explaining how the US market doesn't get that mainstream.
Yeah, and obviously in the UK, boxing is a major sport. Top 5, definitely. Probably top 3. Mm-hmm. So the major broadcasting outlets and media outlets cover all of our press conferences. So like, the BBC and the ITV, which is like your traditional network channels, will be covering our events, even though it's not live on their platform. The national media outlets will be covering, the national radio shows will be covering it. So here we have to rely more on the boxing media, like you guys, because that is the source of really output to the reachers and the people. And I feel like it's difficult to grow a US talent. Like I look at the likes of Crawford and I look at the likes of Wilder and those kind of people. They should really be, like when Wilder was a world heavyweight champion, I thought this guy should be like a national superstar. Like he is a really exciting fighter. He's the world heavyweight champion from Alabama. Like the whole of the national media should be following him and telling his story. And I'm from London. I said, where are you from? I said, I'm from Alabama. I said, can I ask you a question? Like, do you know Deontay Wilder? And they went, of course. I was like, oh right. I said, is he a big deal in Alabama? Huge, yeah. He's a massive star. I'm like, good. That's a good start. He should have had, in my opinion, more events in Alabama. Terence Crawford should have had more events in Nebraska, because the visuals of having 15,000, 20,000 in your hometown, being driven around the home city on an open top bus with the adoration of your city and your state, that resonates, I think, with the US.
You really think Devin will vacate the
100%.
WBC?
He ain't going to fight Sandor Martin. Like, who's going to pay for that fight?
You don't think the WBC would go, do what you want to do, champ, we'll get 3% of whatever you're doing, and
no,
Sandor,
because they've already paid him.
Okay.
They had to pay Sandor Martin for this fight, as a step aside. Unless Devin boxes that off quickly, but you got to take a tiny payday for that. And I don't think Devin's about that,
Mm-hmm. So now that you heard what he said, what he's basically saying is, in the UK, right, there's like it's one country thing, right? There are no real states, right? There's neighborhoods, there's cities and things like that, but there's no like states, right? They're not divisive. So when he promotes a fighter, he can pretty much promote this fighter to the whole country, right? And he can build this fighter, right? So he can invite the media, he can get the publications to print, publish, things like that. But what he's saying here in the States is hard to do that because the country doesn't get behind the fighters, right? And the fighters don't fight in their own states. He's saying, like if Deontay would have fought in Alabama way more, and so did Bud in Omaha, right? And just kept pushing it. And like he said, optics, right? So it's great for branding. You're there, you're fighting, you're generating money, right? And people from New York and people from Texas, the casuals would be like, "Oh, this guy must be a big deal. Look at how much he's packing, parades and all that. Who's this guy?" But instead, they try to chase the money and go to Vegas and go to New York and go somewhere else where they're not popular or nobody knows them, because the local media of those said states are not promoting them, right? Whereas if the state you're fighting in is promoting you and giving you all these accolades and doing all these events for you when you do fight, and they run these reels back, right? They run the reels of your career, your highlights. They see all of these things and they go, wait a minute, who's this guy? Why is, what was he such a big deal in Omaha or Alabama or Tszyu? So I'll call him Costa. Tszyu in Sydney, Australia. He's huge. He can go back home and make tons of money. Bring back a fighter back, right? The thing, yeah, and a lot of casuals started to hear about Tszyu because of Australia. It's not a draw here. It's a draw in Australia. Just like Bud is a draw in Omaha. Just like Deontay in Alabama. Just like Errol Spence in Texas. Errol Spence in Texas destroys every time. Because he's from there. And the local media needs him, right? Because it's good for the local economy, so they get behind this fighter. Reason why everybody wanted to fight Earl and not Bud. I mean, Bud literally had to challenge and petition the WBO to give him a title shot against Fundora. Nobody was thinking about Bud in reality. And let's cut the bullshit. Nobody was thinking about Terrence Brook Crawford as the next fight. He was just being said and here and there just out of respect, but nobody was calling for Bud. Bud had to say, I'm petitioning. Nobody said after this, I'm petitioning. Once Errol said I'm available, that changed the game, the landscape, because we can make money in Texas. Not gonna make money with Bud. Nobody wanted to fight Bud. Just like Haney. Haney's a world talent just like Bud. Undisputed, just like Bud. Did you heard what Eddie Hearn is saying? He's the money man, right? He's saying he's going to have to drop that title at 140 to go to 147 because Sando Martin being his mandatory, nobody going to pay for that. So understand economics. These fighters like Haney and Bud are dependent on the promotion, the promoters, to pay for his bag. Not the ticket sales, not the event. Who's going to pay for that? When they're not going to get their money back, more than likely. Or not come close to it. Maybe they break even and make no profit. Who puts in all those hours for no profit? But that's what they're saying. Like, they have to drop belts to go get the fights that will eventually bring them the money. There's no one in and around there that they say, well, we'll pay to see that. We'll pay for that. We'll front up the money. Nobody's fronting up the money. Same thing like Subriel Matias. In New York and in Puerto Rico, maybe he's drawing. But he should have been fighting in New York all the time. All the time. That's Puerto Rico's second home. He should have been there all the time. But he's not. He's not in Puerto Rico enough. So he's not a draw in Vegas. He's not a draw in Philly. It's not a draw in Florida. It's just not. So when you have these guys that just are not helping themselves be marketed, it hurts their brand. I mean, you have Bud saying, I want to co-promote the Tszyu fight. Nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to allow you to co-promote that. Nobody's going to do that. And then he puts up the ridiculous demands. They're like, nah. Aside from you not being a draw, you're going to give all this up? For what? When I can do this fight and get all the money, get to the bag solely. I don't need you. Whereas Canelo can do what he's doing now, which is duck everybody, and he still sells. He's a draw. He's a draw. Tyson Fury, AJ, those are draws. They draw people in, regardless of who they're fighting. That's what a draw is. When, regardless of who you fight, you still come close to a very high number of gate and a very high number of pay-per-view, which none of those fighters in my thumbnail can do on their own, fighting nobodies. They can't. They can't. Listen, Mayweather's a draw, or was, right? When he fought Berto, he still drew $850-something in pay-per-view buys. he still made bank. He's a draw. Whether it was because you wanted to see him at his masterful level or you wanted to see him lose, doesn't matter. You were drawn to him. You were drawn to the fight. He can draw. None of these guys can. And it's sad because they're just not allowing themselves to be marketed in that way. They want to get to the bag first before putting in the work and before actually being branded as anything worth looking at. And then you have all of these fanboys who, instead of wanting to encourage the fights, they want to count people's money when you're the one paying for it. If you're the one paying for the product, you should be able to demand what you want, not what the fighter dictates. You're paying for it. We're paying for it. Why would we want less? It makes no sense. Once these fighters learn to get out of their own way, we'll start getting the fights. PBC right now is putting on a second great card. Putting Benavidez and putting Tank Davis on the same card when they just had a bang of a card to kick off their boxing. So let me know. Do you really agree or don't agree? I mean, it's fine if you don't agree. That's fine. I'm just asking you the question. Should these fighters start letting the promoters do their job and offer them what they're worth in their weight? Because if they don't, we're going to see all of this that's happening, which is basically we're not getting the fights we need. Right now, we're starting to get some. Let's keep the steam rolling. Let me know in the comments below. Do you agree with my statement? Do not? Do you think the fighters should, get paid what they're actually worth and not what they think they are based on what they think they have already done in boxing? Let me know in the comments below. See you in the next one, and I'm out. Peace.